Hi, my name is Lenore Von Stein, and this is yet another episode of The Facts. The Facts is art and discussion. Tonight is discussion, and we're going to be talking about education. And with me tonight is Bill Crane from the City University of New York, where he teaches psychology and child development. Lois Weiner from the I got to make sure, the City University of New Jersey.
Close, New Jersey City University.
New Jersey City University, where she teaches primary and secondary education. And Alan Fagenberg, also from City College, teaching architecture and education. And tonight, I want to talk about a number of things. One of these words that's thrown around, it's two words actually, several syllables. Creative thinking. You know, what is creative thinking or critical thinking? Since that seems to be one of the things that is being 86'd from this setup. I just want to throw this out. I teach too. And I, at one point in my teaching career, because I teach pilots and ground crew, and one of the issues with accidents is how much can the pilots think on their feet in a moment of truth, and the militarization of pilotry. The routine of it gets in the way when there is one of these moments of truth. And so accidents happen from human error, from not being able to think out of the box. That's a stupid phrase, but I'm using it. Out of the box. And so the issues for air safety people is how to marry, this kind of discipline that's part of that world with the ability to question authority, with the ability to question authority is a big thing with me, and I think it's a really important aspect of education, of living. And how to, and here's just one last thing. One of the things that has been talked about is that as for instance, airplanes become increasingly run by computers, that the problems that come up will be unique each time. So you can't apply the answers that you came up with last time because it'll be a different problem. Yeah. How do you engender in students critical thinking facilities, creative thinking abilities?
Can I say a little bit? We have a farm sanctuary where we rescued farms, and we had a goat that had a baby goat. And when we watched the baby goat was constantly improvising. The first time he tried to climb up a rock, he fell down. He climbed up again, and for good measure, it seemed to be he jumped down backwards. And then from then on, he jumped down, the same day, jumped down in different ways. He would spin to the right, spin to the left. He was constantly doing stunts. And I began thinking, why is he doing, like he's practicing to be a gymnast or something like that.
So much fun.
Yeah, and I was wondering, why is he doing that? And then as I thought about it, the ability to improvise, like what you say about in the crunch, if he was up in a mountain and there was a leopard or a real threat, he would have the capacity to. There's nowhere he couldn't jump. He could jump backwards, forwards. He could jump from rock to rock. He could come up with something because he could improvise. And I think in children, it was playful. He was just playing all the time. And I think in human children, it's largely through play, which we're eliminating in our schools.
See, if we had this goat and we sent him to a school,
yeah, we
would give him a book to read and test him on what the right way to jump was.
And he'd know one way to jump, and he wouldn't have any faith in his ability to create at the moment. But in play, the kids in their make-believe play especially, they try out different roles. They play the mother, they play the father, they play the baby, they create new scenarios. It's what you call out of the box is good enough.
I was having a discussion with a Danish teacher who's also a union member. In Denmark, the preschool teachers are unionized, and it's one of the most progressive teachers unions in the world. And I think that maybe when you marry teacher unionism and a commitment to young kids, you're apt to get a very progressive form of unionism. But in any case, one of the questions that he raised for me is that, in this country we've almost lost play in schools, even in preschools. I mean, it's one of the most chilling aspects of what's happened to our educational system is that now kids in preschool are being given academic work, and if nothing else, they're taught to do the bubble sheets for standardized testing. One of the issues that he raised, he and I were talking about, was why can't we just say that kids should be able to play? In other words, why do we have to say that play is children's work, which is the way that preschool educators have justified play, is that they've said that play is children's work. And what we've lost is the ability to say that it's okay for kids just to play.
Play is children's work?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's the rationale.
that's the rationale that it was given to try to push back the testing and the push down of academics in preschools, is that preschool teachers would say, and teacher educators would say that, well, play is children's work. In other words, they're learning something, they're accomplishing, they're learning something. That's what Bill was saying, that they're learning something that's important. And this Dane said to me, why can't we just say that they're playing and that's enough? And this actually gets me to one thing that I want to say, which is, I think it's important in understanding when we defend creativity and we defend critical thinking in education, is that we do have a crisis of inequality in public education in our schools. And that there are parents who are very rightfully worried that their kids are going to be cheated because historically they have been cheated. I mean, that's the case.
Yeah.
Poor minority and working class kids have historically in this country not been given equal educational opportunity. And I think that part of the problem that we who believe that play is important both in and of itself and play in school, that we have to make space for that in schools, is that we have to reassure and make the case to parents from communities that have historically been cheated of educational opportunity, that this is not an effort to continue to cheat them.
Well, I agree with that strongly. At the same time, play is being wiped out no matter what the social class.
Yes,
we
that's
have
right.
a recent
That's a very
study
good point.
of kindergartens,
Yeah.
Ed Miller and Joan Allman, and they looked at middle classes in Westchester. They looked in the cities. They sampled pretty well. The amount of academics in kindergarten is 2 or 3 hours. The amount of test prep is there's an average of like almost an hour of test prep, and play 30 minutes max for play, often nothing. Often no play at all. No sandboxes, no outdoors activities, nothing. Wow. Kindergarten has just been totally deprived of it, and these are across the board. So if you believe that play is important for children, partly because they love it, and partly because it comes out of their souls, their spontaneity, and partly because it develops their imaginations, and you can make a case for it.
Let's go further.
It's a serious. It's
mental as well as physical, and I think part of the dilemma you have in schools is getting kids at an early age to sit down and be quiet.
Yeah.
Is destructive. I think this, so what does it do? So it plays into giving all the kids, especially boys, drugs, because they become hyperactive and then they get labeled.
That's a good insight.
And I think the idea that you're raising is, I think play is important, and it doesn't stop at kindergarten or nursery.
Right.
Play should be inclusive in all of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it should. I just bring up kindergarten because traditionally kindergarten was a playful entry into school, and kindergarten's not serious. It's play, and
right.
But next it's going to be preschool, and if it isn't already.
Well, I think that as work has become more drudgery, as people work longer, as work extends its tentacles into people's lives, then what we're seeing is schooling both reflecting and reproducing that by our extending the tentacles of academics lower and lower and depriving kids of experiences to really exercise their imagination. And the link that I think that what I'd like to hear both Bill and Alan talk about is the way that this relates to the consumer society, how consumption replaces creativity and play. Does that sound right to you?
Well, a lot of it is in toys. Is
buying stuff.
Is buying stuff that, so they're constantly selling kids, and I think it's an enormous industry. I don't remember. I've heard presentations. You probably heard them too.
Yeah,
Susan Lin and
yeah.
others on the enormous amount of money that goes into selling. That's made in selling toys. It's practically the center of our economy is selling toys to children, it's all appealing and lure, and it has a great lure, but the toys break and the kids don't play with them, and they don't use any imagination because the toy is built to supply the imagination. It makes the sounds, and it's really very boring stuff. It does one thing: you push a button, you get one sound, and that's pretty much it. It's shiny and attractive, but people who've studied play say probably the most useful thing is for a child to engage in creative play is to throw away the toy and leave the box. So because they can do all kinds of things. The box can become a little house. It can become a bedroom. It can become a car. It can be the simpler things allow for the imagination to develop rather than these highly structured toys. But the toy that is part of the commercialization of childhood is a major theme.
I agree. I think what happens is though that then you have that and you eliminate play and you eliminate recreation from the school, and then what do? So parents who have more money, then they can buy those activities after school. So they can get the dance class and art class and music class and sports and everything. And those really aren't the free play that we're looking at, because those two are too structured and too competitive and too demanding.
Competitive, yes.
There's a wonderful architect, that's what we were talking about before, in Holland named Herman Hertzberger, who does a lot of schools. And one of the things that Herman insists on is that his, quote, playgrounds have no equipment in them. They're just block walls with sand.
Good for him.
And it's just what you were saying. It's like watching the kids at the seashore. With nothing, they are able to challenge and create their own imagination, and that's what innovative play is. And I think that's where critical thinking comes, where they're always questioning things. So, we were down at the seashore. So what do kids do everywhere in the world? You build a castle, and the tide is coming in. And you build the walls higher and higher, so you're going to keep that water out. And every one of them knows that it's going to get destroyed, but they're going to try to do it anyway. And they repeat this process day after day, year after year. And then you see the kids helping each other. So they figure out. So then they figure, well, what do we do higher? Well, if you make it higher, you have to make it thicker. Well, if you make it thicker, you put a trench around it. And then how do you drain the water out? And these are real.
But you also decorate it.
I know. Of course. Is it a castle or is it a house?
Yeah, you have to give it form. Right.
So they're designing. They're certainly learning about physics. They're learning about the ocean and the tides.
Yes.
They're learning about cooperative play, because all the time I see is just kids just join and they don't even know each other and they start playing. And all the stuff that comes out of it is actually quite amazing. And in education, you're right, since we can't sell it, it's not worth anything.
Another thing is that it's not plastic, and they're developing some connection to the real earth and the real world, the sand, the water, which most kids don't have. We keep promoting the plastic world for them and the world of screens and the artificial.
Yeah, I want to say something about screens, because I just read a lot of research from a very, I think, interesting and important series of studies from the MacArthur Foundation that you can download for free from the MIT Press about adolescents' use of digital technology
This is a big issue.
and social media. And it's really fascinating. It's really, really fascinating, because what their research indicates is that the kids are really creating social space for themselves that does not exist in schools. So adults are likely to say, oh, the kids are spending so much time, texting, and in fact, schools are so repressive now. Schools are so repressive, has such little space for kids to communicate with one another authentically, to even share time, right? They've gotten rid of recess.
They've gotten rid of recess?
Oh,
In
yes.
a lot of schools, there's no
Oh,
recess.
yes. Oh, yes. I would say in most schools
Maybe
in
the
this
time for test prep.
in most schools in this country, they've gotten rid of. Now it's been intensified because of the budget cuts. They've gotten rid of all the classes that were any.
Phys ed goes, art goes.
There's no art in, or they have it maybe once a week.
Yeah, well, it's
They don't have recess.
never been high.
Nobody gets a real lunch anymore.
Right.
It's brought in by a privatized company that delivers a box lunch to the kids, if that's what they have, and then they go back.
To the grind.
They go back to the grind. They have math literacy, and then maybe they have social studies, next day math literacy, and then maybe they have science. Math.
After maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years of this standards movement and the gradual elimination of recess and kindergarten and more emphasis on tests, is education improved over this time? Is there any evidence that
No, but then you can bring the kids and the families.
Of course, if Lois is right, the purpose is not to improve. That's
Right,
the
not at
valid
all. No,
purpose.
it's not.
The purpose
It's
is
not.
to
That's
get them
the
ready
rhetoric.
That's the rhetoric, is to get
And
them ready
that's
for
the rhetoric. And
McDonald's.
I just want to say this discussion that we've been having about what you were saying about toys and play. We need to think about work and about what's happened to work.
Well, you see it as
Because
driven.
schooling is reflecting, as I said, reflecting and reproducing
Yeah,
exactly what we see in the workplace. And Margaret Haley years ago wrote this, she gave this speech, Why Teachers Should Organize, I think it was to the National Education Association, and it was really prescient. She said that if educators fail to take the drudgery out of work, that the drudgery of the workplace would take place in schools. In other words, life in schools would be drudgery.
Mhm.
She uses that
Preparation.
term, drudgery. I can't think of a better term, a better word to describe what life in schools is like and what life at work is like for most people, drudgery. So and then what do people do when they have a little free time? Adults. TV, not even that so much. Maybe they go on the computer, they shop.
Oh, shopping, yeah.
Commercials.
Well, that's shopping.
People shop. So, in other words, the commercialization of childhood is preparation
over.
So
for a
sad.
life of drudgery, where you don't do anything creative yourself, but you shop and you buy these mass-produced items from wherever. But I want to say, in a more optimistic note, that it seems to me that this DIY, this do-it-yourself movement among young people, this website, Etsy, I don't know if you've seen it. Well, people make things. Young people are very interested now in making things with their hands.
Like the 60s.
Like the 60s, that's right.
What do they
There's
make?
this appeal. Like crocheting.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Crocheted hats, or cooking, or making your own pickles, or you go online and you see all this advice about how to do almost anything. You can make anything yourself, you can do anything yourself. And I think that that's a rebellion. I think that's a
Human
rebellion.
spirit's fighting back.
Yes,
I
I
hope
think
so.
that
They're
the human
actually using
spirit.
real yarn
You mean wool? As opposed to.
as opposed to doing it on the screen.
On the screen.
Knitting on the screen. I was thinking.
Or
I
playing all
was
the
afraid
sports
for
on
a
the
minute you
screen.
were going to say they're making things on the screen. And
Well,
is there a are we?
I don't know. I don't
do we live
object to
in a real-
computer
Well,
graphics.
I do, because
you object to
we've lost touch.
In
I
part.
do. We
Do
lost
you?
touch.
In part, yeah.
Oh, I
We've
don't.
lost touch with the real world, in the natural world. We've totally, like I ask my students, what phase is the moon in? no one knows.
They don't know what that
No one
means.
knows. They don't know to look up. Nobody watches what, they don't know. They probably
I
could
plead
punch it out
guilty.
on the they probably could look it up. They could Google it probably.
But
I
think
plead
you
guilty.
suggest-
I
no, but
plead
it's a mi-
guilty.
it's- I think
Like,
also it's a
Ellen
mixed
got me
bag.
started this because of this beautiful description of children at the beach.
Yeah.
And they're
You
and
can't do
something
that on screen.
And it's not all their own ideas either. It's the ocean comes and teaches them things.
Right.
It sounds sort of,
If
I
we-
want to say, are you a Luddite?
Yes,
No question about it.
no question about
I was
it.
going to say, I was sniffing, I think
But it's getting very serious, the alienation from the natural
So
world,
what-
and even from other kids. If you're gonna, it's all gonna be through the screen.
I don't think that that's true about alienation from other
Okay, go
kids in
ahead.
the social media. I disagree with
yeah,
all that.
okay.
Yeah, I disagree too. But looking, let's. This might be undoable, but like sci-fiing it, the escape, the steps that go. This we commodify ourselves, each other, what we do. And when we make art, it's often silly, imitation stuff, and not that wasn't something that we've always done a certain amount of, and but one of the things that you mentioned was that the internet is one of the ways out of this particular tunnel, this hall of mirrors that we're as our betters arrange us. So what are some of the other ways that, or can you? How do you think? Not even that exist. I'm asking for your imaginations to what 100 years from now, or
110 years.
110 years, or how many? To escape this very clear fascist stuff that's going on. Commodification of us.
Of everything.
Yeah, well, it's authoritarianism that's so prevalent. I find, because my work is, I teach people who are teachers, who've come back to school to get graduate degrees. So mostly the people that I'm working with and I'm teaching are people who are teachers. And I find that when I talk about their students, or when I talk about students in a way that's real. For instance, when I say to them, "Well, school is boring," they're stunned to hear anybody say that school is boring, and yet they all agree with me. So they're first stunned, and so I think that one of the things we have to do is we have to speak truth to power.
Absolutely.
We have to shows like
and hold
this
on to our jobs at the same time.
Well, as much as we can, but we have to say, we have to state these realities.
The emperor's new clothes, huh?
Yeah, we have to really
I agree
state
with you.
these realities.
Otherwise, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, because people aren't used to hearing it. We live in such a controlled environment because of the corporate media that it's very important that people just be honest.
Well, try speaking out against online instruction, which is coming increasingly in the higher education.
You got her.
I teach an online class.
Okay.
Bill,
And-
I teach an online class, and
Okay, and pretty soon you want to know what's going to happen not in 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't see. I think it's going to be very few teachers. Everything is going to be online.
well, there are two separate issues.
Well, that's a goal.
One
It's
is the
increasing
technology.
very fast.
It is. One is the technology, and the other is the society's use of the technology. And I want to separate
right.
between those two things.
What I just want to point out: are there going to be human beings looking at other human beings face to face, and do you see that as this evaporation of this? Do you see that as a problem?
We're getting close to the end of
Okay.
of our wonderful discussion.
Okay.
But we're not at the end yet. I'm just, we've got like 2.5 minutes left to
Oh.
go.
So we should talk to end things up rather than to open things. No.
I think that the use of technology has to be controlled, and that political decisions have to be made in the public good about the uses of technology. But I think that it's important that we understand I think the emancipatory potential of technology and its pedagogical uses, because there are things that I can do in teaching an online class that I cannot do in a face-to-face class. I can bring together somebody from northern New Jersey and southern New Jersey and have a guest speaker from British Columbia in my online class, and I can't do that in a face-to-face class, and that's very exciting.
Okay, I remember a quick anecdote. When I was an insecure freshman, I remember getting up the nerve to raise my hand and make a point, and I remember this professor's face still looking at me and thinking while I spoke, and taking me very seriously and nodding. And it made a huge difference in my whole life, that this distinguished professor was sitting there listening with all his might to hear what I had to say, and was nodding and saying, that's very thoughtful.
I'd reinforce, I agree with you, it's a tool, it's a machine, and it depends how it's used. And I think the trend, certainly with those in control, is to use it to eliminate all of us, no question about it. But I see with my architecture students, on the one hand, I get very nervous because they're all working on their computers, doing everything. I say, oh, they're not talking to each other, they're not. But then what happens is I also see the opposite, is when somebody says, come here, I'm having a problem, could you help me out? And all of a sudden, something that was so separate is now turning into a group discussion where they really are talking to each other about really important issues. And I think that's where we come in to facilitate that communication.
Right. We're in the last 30 seconds, and so I want to thank Bill. I want to thank Lois. I want to thank Alan. I want to thank all the crew. I want to, and I am. I'm not just pretending. And so thank you for joining us tonight. And as always, we'll be back.